Hey guys, Norlok here from EU Realm Bronze Dragonflight. Since the recent release of patch 4.3, Destruction Warlocks have become more powerful than ever. So in this video I'm going to be showing you the spec and glyphs and the rotation of Destruction Warlock. It's not very different from patch 4.2, but I thought I'd give you an up-to-date version of the rotation and talents. So other than that guys, I hope you find the video very informative and enjoy. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is the Destruction Warlock talents. The talents I've chosen here to show you are what I would consider to be the best basic talents, and what I mean by basic is that they're not orientated to any specific boss fight and they're just sort of general. So that means that in some cases you might need to swap the talents around so that it suits the boss fight better. But anyway, so the first thing you see whenever you're clicking into Destruction is Conflagrate, and what this does is it's a instant cast damage dealing effect that does very high amounts of damage. You get 25% fire spell damage increase from Cataclysm, and then you get your mastery bonus Fiery Apocalypse. So as soon as you click into the tree, you're going to see these talents here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the more important talents that you need to use, and I'll tell you also which talents that you shouldn't really use. So the first three talents in the first tier are basic damage increasing talents, and you also get a buff or a debuff put on the boss to increase your critical strike chance against them by 5% every time you cast Incinerate on them. On the next tier I've only chosen Ember Storm because Searing Pain is quite a useless spell, and Aftermath is more of a PvP orientated talent, so Ember Storm to reduce cast times. Shadow Burn, this is a very good spell since the new patch because it deals Shadow Burn or Shadow Flame damage, which means that it's affected by your Cataclysm and Fiery Apocalypse buffs, so you need to go into that. Backdraft just reduces the cast time of your Incinerating Chaos Bolt. Improved Soulfire increases your damage by 8% when you cast Soulfire, so that means in a raid boss you'll need to cast that every 20 seconds and you need to keep that buff up. On the next tier we have Burning Embers, which is just a damage over time effect that is put on the boss whenever you cast your Soulfire or your Imp's Firebolt. We have Soul Leech, which restores mana every time you cast some of your big spells. The reason you want to restore mana is so that you don't have to life tap as often, and that just means that you have more time to do damaging spells. I haven't chosen Backlash because that's more of a PvP orientated spell. I've chosen Nether Ward because the less damage you take in a fight, meaning the less damage that the healers have to heal, and that just makes for a smoother run. It's not really going to increase your DPS a lot, but it's better than a lot of the other talents that you have to choose from, so I definitely go for Nether Ward. Then we have Nether Protection, which just reduces the damage taken by the School of Magic protected by your Nether Ward by 30%. Then we have Shadow Fury, which is it's not going to increase your DPS, but for some boss fights it can be very handy for ad control because you're able to use it to stun AoE targets. On the next one we have Fire and Brimstone, which is basically just increases your damage done. On the next tier we have Bane of Havoc, which basically means that if you put Bane of Havoc onto a target you're not attacking, 15% of all the damage that you deal to the target you are attacking will 15% will be added on to the target that you're not attacking, that you've put your Bane of Havoc on, so that's a very good spell. And then we have Empowered Imp, which just means that every time your Imp casts Firebolt you have a chance to get an instant cast Soulfire. Chaos Bolt is the last spell in the tier. It's just a little bit better than Incinerate, so you just need to use this whenever it's off cooldown, but this is not much to it. As soon as you finish your destruction you go into the Demonology tree. The first talents I've chosen here are Dark Arts. This reduces the Imp's Firebolt cast time, which means that you're going to get Empowered Imp proccing more often and he's going to deal a bit more damage. I've chosen Fell Synergy because I've noticed that my Imp does take quite a bit of damage in raids, and if he has Fell Synergy this means that he's going to get healed up and his chance to die is reduced. And then the last talent I've chosen is Mana Feed. This is an optional talent because it's just, again, it's a mana returning talent. If you want to, you can always put the talents into improved life tap if you prefer to use life tap than getting your constant mana back. And the last part is the 3 points into improved corruption. This is one of your main damage over time effects, so you definitely need to put 3 points into improved corruption. So like I said, there are some points that you'll need to orientate for certain boss fights. You might even want to put in some points instead of Fell Synergy into Demonic Embrace so that you have a larger health pool, but generally this is a very good talent spec to use, and I would recommend it for any beginners. So the glyph system is pretty basic. You have your 3 prime glyphs that you need to use. You have Glyph of Imp, Glyph of Conflagrate, and Glyph of Immolate. One thing I'd like to say about the prime glyphs is that if there's a fight where your Imp isn't going to be doing any damage or very little, in that case I would recommend that you use Glyph of Chaos Bolt instead, but as you can see I haven't even bought it, so it hasn't been much of a problem. The major glyphs we have are the Glyph of Life Tap and the Glyph of Soul Link. I've chosen Glyph of Life Tap so that I don't have to cast my Life Tap as often, and I've chosen my Glyph of Soul Link so that I take less damage, and then the healers have to concentrate less healing on me. Other than that, the last 4 glyphs are really up to your personal preference. As you can see, there's plenty of glyphs that might come in handy for certain boss fights, but again, it's just whatever you prefer. So something I quickly want to talk to you guys about is the Destruction Warlock stat priorities. Your main stat as a Destruction Warlock is Intellect, meaning that you'll want to gem and enchant for Intellect wherever you can. The reason being is that Intellect increases your mana pool, meaning that you have to life tap less. It increases your spell power, meaning that your spells deal more damage, and it also increases your spell critical hit chance. So moving on to the secondary stats, your main secondary stat is Hit. So you'll want to go for the 17% hit cap as soon as possible. This means that you won't miss any spells on any bosses. One thing I'd like to say is that even though above 17% hit is useless, you'll want to go above the cap rather than below it. The reason being is that the one spell that you might miss on a boss fight could be one of your most powerful, and that's going to bring down your DPS. The second most important secondary stat is your Haste. You'll want to reforge away any crit and mastery if the item already has hit to haste, or you've already gotten the hit cap. So it's intellect, hit, haste, and then after that crit is your next best stat, and then mastery. So that goes intellect, hit to 17%, haste, crit, and then mastery. One thing I'd like to say about gemming is that the only reason you should go for the gem slot bonus is if it has intellect, or if the item gives you 30 of one of your secondary stats, like 30 haste, and that's usually found on the headpiece. So now it's time for the most important part of the video, which is the Destruction Warlock's rotation. In this part of the video I'm going to briefly explain what each of the spells that you use in rotation does, and I'm going to also tell you which ones have the highest priority. So the first spell we have is Curse of Elements, which increases all damage done to the target that has this effect on him by 8%. So this needs to be kept up at all times, but it has a 5-minute duration, so it doesn't need to be refreshed that often. The next spell we have is Bane of Doom, which is a 2-minute damage over time effect that you need to keep up. Next thing we have is Soul Burn, which is used in conjunction with Soulfire. The reason being is that it gives Soulfire an instant cast. And the reason we use Soulfire is because we now have improved Soulfire, so whenever Soulfire hits a target, it increases all spell damage done by you by 8% for 20 seconds. One thing I'd like to say about that is Soulfire should usually be refreshed about 4 seconds before the duration ends, so that by the time the spell is finished casting and it hits the target, you won't have lost any damage increasing effects. So next we have Immolate, which is one of your main damage over time effects. Immolate should be cast in conjunction with Corruption. The reason being is that both of these have a very close duration, but Immolate's is just 2 seconds lower, which compensates for the cast time of Immolate. So you should always refresh Corruption and Immolate, and of course refresh them again about 3 to 4 seconds before they're actually finished. The next spell we have is Conflagrate, which is an instant cast that deals a very high amount of damage. You need to have Immolate on the target to cast Conflagrate, and you should use Conflagrate every time it's off cooldown. That takes priority over the rest of the spells in this list. The next spell we have is Chaos Bolt, which is a very high damaging cast ability. This is affected by whenever you cast your Conflagrate and you get the spell effect Backlash, which reduces, or not Backlash, sorry, Backdraft, which reduces its cast time by 30%. So this needs to be used on cooldown. The next spell we have is Incinerate, which is your main filler spell and needs to be used any time that your spells are on cooldown and you have nothing else to do. Then you just cast Incinerate. The next spell is Shadowburn. Shadowburn has a higher priority to be cast, but only whenever the boss is below 20% health. This is an instant cast that deals slightly a bit more damage than Incinerate, and of course should be used on cooldown as well. And then of course I've already explained Bane of Havoc. This can be used in boss fights with multiple targets. You just place it on the second target and continue to attack the one that you're attacking, and of course that'll increase your DPS by 15%. The last spell I have here is Fell Flame. The only reason that Fell Flame is in the rotation is for whenever you're moving. If you have full mana and you don't need to life tap, you should always use Fell Flame when you're moving. Otherwise you use life tap to get full mana whenever you have to move from one location to another. Say it's for getting out of fire, or if it's just the tactics of the fight. So the cooldowns we have are Demon Soul and Summon Doomguard. Demon Soul needs to be used on cooldown and should always be used in conjunction with other trinkets or volcanic flasks if you have them, or not volcanic flasks, volcanic potions. And Demon Soul with your imp increases your critical strike chance by 30%. One thing I would recommend is if there's certain points in a fight when you're going to be using Time Warp and you know that your raider party is going to be doing that, I would definitely try to time it so that Demon Soul is off cooldown for that duration. And then if you are using Time Warp, always use the Summon Doomguard during it. Otherwise you can just cast your Summon Doomguard during one of the times that you're popping all your cooldowns. So that's the rotation. It's basically just keep your damage over time effects up. That includes the 1 to 6 here. And then of course use your main cooldowns before you use your Incinerate, which is just used anytime that you're not casting one of these spells. So that's basically everything you need to know about Destruction Warlock so that you can start raiding. If you're worried about add-ons, there are add-ons out there that you can get to manage your cooldowns. It'll just put emphasis on your cooldowns and damage over time effects, but me personally, I prefer not to use add-ons as they add clutter to the game and sometimes they can even cause lag. Also, if you would like to ask any questions, just leave a comment down below and I'll get back to them as soon as possible. Subscribe if you want to see more Destruction Warlock videos. I'll be posting some PvE and some PvP if you're interested in that too. Other than that guys, I hope you found the video useful and informative, and I will see you next time.